One single film, filled with swords, blood, and raw determination, didn't just shape the fantasy genre, but also transformed a young Austrian bodybuilder into one of the world's biggest movie stars. Back in the early 1980s, a brutal, mystical epic called Conan the Barbarian thundered into theaters. For many, it was just another sword and sorcery adventure. But behind the camera, the making of this movie was chaos. Strange casting choices, dangerous stunts, bizarre accidents, and more than a few wild stories that sound almost too crazy to believe. Here are 20 jaw-dropping facts you've probably never heard. Let's saddle up.
Number 1.
Imagine sitting in a packed theater in 1982. The movie's named after its main character, Conan, and yet, for nearly 24 minutes, this towering warrior doesn't say a single word. It's almost unheard of in cinema. Most movies introduce their hero with a strong line or a witty exchange right away. But in Conan the Barbarian, director John Milius and producer Dino De Laurentiis be patient. They let the audience absorb Conan's world before hearing his voice. And when he finally speaks, it's not just any line. It's one of the most legendary quotes in movie history. When asked, "What is best in life?" Conan replies, "To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of their, well, you know the rest." That single moment cemented Arnold Schwarzenegger's presence on screen. It was powerful, unforgettable, and instantly iconic. But here's a twist. Originally, Arnold was supposed to have way more dialogue. In fact, early drafts had him narrating much of the movie himself, telling his own story. The problem? Arnold's thick Austrian accent at the time wasn't always easy to understand. So the narration duties were handed over to the legendary actor Mako, whose commanding, mystical voice became the perfect fit for the film's mythic tone. It was a gamble, less dialogue for the star, but it worked. That silence built anticipation, and when Conan finally spoke, the line hit with the force of a sword strike.
Number 2.
Today, it's hard to imagine anyone but Arnold Schwarzenegger wielding Conan's massive broadsword. But believe it or not, he wasn't the producer's first choice. Back in the late 1970s, Hollywood was flooded with macho, rugged leading men. Names like Charles Bronson and Sylvester Stallone were at the top of casting lists. Both were considered for Conan. Bronson had the grit, the intensity, and the scowl. Stallone, fresh off his meteoric rise with Rocky, had proven he could carry an underdog hero to box office glory. But here's the thing, neither had the physical presence the producers wanted. Conan wasn't just another tough guy, he was a myth come to life. A warrior who looked like he stepped out of the pages of a fantasy painting. Then the producers saw Pumping Iron, the 1977 bodybuilding documentary. Suddenly, everything clicked. There was this larger-than-life figure on screen, exuding charisma, confidence, and raw power. He wasn't just playing strong, he was strength itself. That man, of course, was Arnold Schwarzenegger. Legendary critic Roger Ebert would later say that Arnold's casting was inevitable. It wasn't just about acting, Arnold was Conan. And when paired with co-star Sandal Bergman, who played the fierce warrior Valeria, the physical embodiment of these characters became something audiences couldn't look away from. Imagine the alternate timeline. Conan played by Stallone, delivering lines in his signature mumble. Or Bronson, stoic, but lacking the mythic presence. It might have been interesting, but it wouldn't have changed cinema the way Arnold did.
Number 3.
Now, here's where things get really fascinating. You'd think a world champion bodybuilder like Arnold would just walk onto set and be ready to play Conan, right? Wrong. Becoming Conan wasn't about having muscles. It was about moving like a warrior, fighting like a barbarian, and looking authentic in every battle. Arnold dedicated 18 months of his life to transforming into this role. He trained in horseback riding, because what's a barbarian without his steed? Swordsmanship, under the guidance of martial arts master Kiyoshi Yamazaki. Combat internship, learning how to fight brutally but safely on camera. And yes, acting lessons to refine his screen presence. He even grew out his long mane of hair, and unlike many productions that rely on wigs, Arnold's hair in the film was completely real. All of this effort paid off. Arnold didn't just look like a warrior, he moved like one. His battle scenes combined brute force with a strange grace, making Conan feel like both a savage and a hero destined for legend. This was more than just a role. It was Arnold's proving ground. The moment he showed showed Hollywood he was more than just a bodybuilder. He was a movie star in the making.
Number 4.
The world of Conan feels ancient, brutal, and mystical, like it could exist somewhere between history and myth. But where did this atmosphere come from? The answer lies in director John Milius's wide-ranging influences. He was a lifelong admirer of Japanese culture, especially the traditions of the samurai. He drew from Japanese ghost stories and films like Masaki Kobayashi's Kwaidan, which inspired Conan's eerie, otherworldly atmosphere. Fantasy artist Frank Frazetta was another huge influence. His paintings of warriors and monsters practically defined the look of sword and sorcery for an entire generation. Many of Conan's iconic shots were directly inspired by Frazetta's work. And of course, the original tales by Robert E. Howard, who first created Conan back in the 1930s, formed the backbone of the story. But Milius didn't stop there. He also pulled from later works by L. Sprague de Camp and Lynn Carter, weaving together a tapestry of myth, legend, and fantasy. Even the production design was layered with history. Designer Ron Cobb blended influences from Egyptian symbols, Celtic and Nordic architecture, and even Mesoamerican imagery. The result? A fantasy world that felt like it had evolved from countless ancient civilizations, all colliding at once. That's why Conan the Barbarian doesn't feel like just another fantasy movie. It feels like a legend carved into stone, timeless and mythical.
Number 5.
Remember Conan's first line, the famous crush your enemy's speech. It's powerful, it's iconic. But here's the secret. It wasn't born in Hollywood. This line is actually inspired by history. It's a shortened version of a quote attributed to Genghis Khan, the Mongol warlord who built the largest land empire the world has ever seen. To Khan, life's greatest pleasure was defeating his rivals, seeing them scattered before him, and enjoying the spoils of victory. The filmmakers didn't just pull from the mythic imagination of Robert E. Howard. They tied Conan's world to real warrior culture. And the references didn't stop there. In one scene, Conan flees from a pack of vicious dogs. That's a sly nod to Genghis Khan himself, who was famously afraid of dogs. The film's constant theme of steel isn't random either. Khan's birth name was Temujin, which means finest steel. Even Conan's companion Subutai, while not from Howard's original stories, is based on a real-life Mongol general and close ally of Genghis Khan. These touches transform Conan from a generic barbarian into a character who felt connected to real-world history, making the story resonate on a deeper level.
Number 6.
Finding the right director for Conan the Barbarian was almost as dramatic as the movie itself. The first person attached to the project was Oliver Stone. Yes, the same Oliver Stone who would later make Platoon and Wall Street. He even wrote an early draft of the script. But here's the catch. His vision was so massive and expensive that the studio didn't trust him to handle it. For a while, the producers considered pairing Stone with Joe Alves, the special effects genius who had worked on Jaws. But that idea fizzled out. Then their eyes turned to one of the hottest directors of the time, Ridley Scott, fresh off his sci-fi masterpiece Alien. Imagine if Ridley had taken on Conan, the same director who gave us Blade Runner and Gladiator-style visuals. But Scott turned it down. Maybe the sword and sorcery vibe wasn't his style. Maybe he wasn't ready to trade spaceships for broadswords. Either way, he walked away. Enter Dino De Laurentiis, a legendary producer known for his larger-than-life projects. Dino brought in John Milius, the man who wrote Dirty Harry. Milius reshaped the story into something grittier, raw, and more grounded. Without that change, Conan might never have made it to the screen at all.
Number 7.
When Conan the Barbarian finally hit theaters, audiences thought it was violent. But what they saw was actually a toned-down version of what director John Milius originally shot. Milius loved pushing boundaries. His original cut was drenched in gore, lingering on savage kills and bloody details. Producer Dino De Laurentiis himself reportedly said, "It's too much." One infamous example is Conan's mother's death. In the release film, it's already chilling, but the original version was even longer, bloodier, and more disturbing. The studio demanded a reshoot, softening the moment just enough for audiences. Dozens of violent moments ended up on the cutting room floor. A handful of them later resurfaced in home video editions, but most were lost forever. It leaves fans wondering, how extreme was the Conan we didn't get to see? If the theatrical cut already shocked audiences in 1982, Milius's full vision might have been closer to a horror film than a fantasy adventure.
Number 8.
As if the violence wasn't enough, Conan the Barbarian stirred real-world controversy during its production. The American Humane Association, which monitors animals on set, raised red flags. Here's why. A dog was allegedly kicked during filming. Horses were tripped on purpose for stunts. And most famously, Arnold Schwarzenegger actually punched a camel. That moment stayed in the movie, and audiences laughed. But animal rights activists weren't amused. And it wasn't just about animals. The film's massive sets were built in the salt marshes of Almeria, Spain. To make their fantasy world, the crew altered the natural landscape. Environmental groups protested, furious at the damage left behind. For a film about a wandering barbarian, Conan managed to leave his scars on the real world.
Number 9.
In one of the movie's most memorable scenes, Conan runs for his life across the desert, chased by a pack of snarling dogs. Looks thrilling on screen, right? But here's the truth. Arnold wasn't acting. Those weren't trained Hollywood stunt dogs. According to both Arnold and director John Milius, these animals were genuinely aggressive. Arnold was literally running for his life. Outtakes show him wide-eyed with real fear as the dogs lunged, bit, and clawed at him. Even their trainer had trouble keeping control. At one point, the dogs reportedly turned on him between takes. That's why the scene feels so real. It was real. Conan's desperate sprint across the sands wasn't a performance. It was survival.
Number 10.
One of the creepiest elements of the movie is Thulsa Doom's serpent-worshipping cult. On screen, it looks like pure fantasy, but its roots come from history and from some of the darkest corners of human behavior. The original script by Oliver Stone took inspiration from the Flagellants, a medieval religious sect who whipped themselves in public, believing suffering would bring divine mercy during the plague. The cult's obsession with ritual pain seeped into the design of Doom's snake worshippers. But there's more. Elements of the cult were also modeled after real-life cult leaders from the 1970s, like Charles Manson and Jim Jones, men who manipulated and controlled their followers with chilling devotion. By the time the movie was released in the early 1980s, America was in the middle of an anti-cult movement. Parents feared that secret groups were brainwashing young people. That cultural anxiety made Conan's snake cult even scarier because it reflected fears that were all too real.
Number 11.
By the late 1970s, Arnold Schwarzenegger had already conquered the world of bodybuilding. He had retired from competition after winning the prestigious Mr. Olympia title an incredible 6 times in a row. His focus had shifted to acting, and he was determined to prove himself in Hollywood. But when he landed the role of Conan, something changed. Preparing for the film required intense physical conditioning. Not just looking muscular, but being battle-ready. Arnold threw himself into months of sword practice, endurance training, and heavy lifting. The transformation reignited his competitive fire. In fact, his training for Conan the Barbarian directly influenced his controversial return to the 1980 Mr. Olympia competition. Despite being retired, Arnold shocked the bodybuilding world by entering and winning for a 7th time. Some critics claim the contest was unfair, that Arnold had been favored because of his fame. But one thing is certain, without Conan, Arnold might never have stepped back on stage. The film didn't just launch his movie career, it gave him one last taste of bodybuilding glory.
Number 12.
Every battle scene in Conan requires gallons of fake blood. But there was a problem. Filming took place in bitterly cold conditions. The thick crimson mixture used to freeze blood almost instantly. The crew came up with an unusual solution. Instead of mixing the blood concentrate with water, they used vodka. The alcohol kept the fake blood liquid, even in freezing weather. Here's where it gets funny. During takes where actors had to spit blood after being struck, many of them accidentally swallowed it, which means during long battle sequences, the cast was unknowingly downing mouthfuls of vodka. For some, it became a running joke. Fight, bleed, drink. repeat. Certain cast members even started asking for more blood between takes, turning brutal battles into an unintentional happy hour. It's the kind of behind-the-scenes chaos that proves movie making is never as glamorous as it looks.
Number 13.
When you think of Conan, you probably picture a mythic past full of swords, monsters, and dark sorcery. But believe it or not, the earliest script wasn't set in the distant past at all. Oliver Stone's first draft plays Conan in a post-apocalyptic future, where ancient magic coexisted with futuristic technology. His version featured armies of mutants, grotesque creatures, and massive battles that would have cost over $70 million to produce in the early 1980s, a staggering amount at the time. Stone's vision was ambitious, almost like a mashup of Mad Max and Lord of the Rings, but it was simply too big for studios to risk. Enter producer Dino De Laurentiis, who hired John Milius to reshape the script. Milius stripped away the futuristic elements and grounded the film in a brutal, ancient world. It was the right call. Stone's version might have been fascinating, but Milius's approach gave Conan its timeless, mythic quality. The film feels like it belongs to every era and none, a legend carved out of time.
Number 14.
One of the most iconic props in the film is Conan's massive broadsword, a weapon that became almost an extension of Arnold himself. After filming Wrapped, Arnold kept one of the swords as a personal memento. But here's the incredible part. Years later, when he became the governor of California, he proudly displayed it above his desk in the governor's office. For Arnold, the sword wasn't just a memory. It symbolized his journey, from a young Austrian immigrant with a dream, to a bodybuilding champion, to a Hollywood superstar, and finally, to a political leader. Few props in movie history have crossed over into the real world with such symbolic weight. Conan's sword didn't just shape fantasy cinema, it hung as a reminder of discipline, strength, and ambition in the halls of real-world power.
Number 15.
Action films often rely on stunt doubles to take the hits, fall off horses, or swing dangerous weapons. But in Conan the Barbarian, both Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sandahl Bergman, who played Valeria, had to do nearly all their own stunts. Why? Because no one else looked like them. Arnold's massive build and Bergman's dancer's physique were so unique that it was nearly impossible to find convincing doubles. That meant both actors performed brutal sword fights, horseback chases, and dangerous battle scenes themselves. Bergman, with her background in dance, impressed the crew with her agility and intensity. Arnold, meanwhile, relied on raw strength and stamina, taking on physically punishing scenes without complaint. The downside? They collected plenty of bruises, cuts, and scrapes along the way. But the payoff was authenticity. When you watch Conan the Barbarian, you're not seeing stunt doubles. You're seeing the actors truly living their roles, adding a visceral realism that still holds up today.
Number 16.
The raw intensity of Conan the Barbarian wasn't just movie magic, it came with real danger. During one of the film's most physically demanding sequences, Arnold Schwarzenegger suffered a serious injury. While sprinting and maneuvering through rugged terrain, Arnold collided with a rock and tore his muscles in his back. The injury was so severe that production was delayed while he recovered. For a man known for his invincible physique, this was a humbling moment. Yet Arnold pushed through, insisting on returning to finish the film's most grueling stunts himself. His determination not only impressed the crew, but added to the film's legendary behind-the-scenes toughness. It's one of those cases where the pain of making the movie mirrored the pain we see on screen. The real and the fictional barbarian were equally unstoppable.
Number 17.
Originally, the story of Conan was meant to be told largely through Arnold's dialogue and narration, but early screenings revealed a problem. His thick Austrian accent made some of the lines hard for audiences to follow. Enter Mako Iwamatsu, the Japanese-American actor who also played the wizard in the film. With his commanding voice, Mako delivered the now iconic narration that frames Conan's journey like an ancient myth. His opening lines, talking about the days of high adventure and the riddle of steel, set the tone perfectly. Without Mako's narration, the film might have felt disjointed. With it, Conan the Barbarian became a legend, a tale passed down through generations. Sometimes the smallest changes, like shifting narration, are what give a movie its timeless magic.
Number 18.
As terrifying as Conan is, every great hero needs an unforgettable villain. And in this case, that villain was Thulsa Doom, played by the incomparable James Earl Jones. Jones, already famous as the voice of Darth Vader, brought a new kind of menace to the role. Instead of pure rage or brute strength, he exuded quiet, hypnotic power. Milius and the crew emphasized Jones's piercing eyes. They even used subtle camera tricks and lighting to make them seem larger and more intense. The effect was chilling. When Thulsa Doom stared at you, it felt like he could reach inside your mind and bend your will. This wasn't just a villain to be fought with swords. He was a villain who could make you doubt yourself with a single glance. Jones later admitted that it was one of the most unusual roles he'd ever taken. Part sorcerer, part cult leader, part father figure to Conan. And it worked brilliantly.
Number 19.
What's a hero without his theme? Conan the Barbarian would not be the same without its thunderous, unforgettable music, composed by Basil Poldoris. Recorded with the Basque National Orchestra, the score is sweeping, primal, and operatic. Poldoris used massive choral arrangements and pounding percussion to create a sound that felt both ancient and larger than life. Interestingly, much of the film has very little dialogue. That silence put more weight on the score, which essentially became the movie's voice. The music doesn't just accompany Conan's journey, it tells the story. Even today, critics rank it among the greatest fantasy scores ever composed. Without Basil Poldoris, Conan's saga wouldn't feel nearly as legendary.
Number 20.
When Conan the Barbarian finally hit theaters in 1982, it wasn't clear if audiences would embrace it. Sword and sorcery films were a gamble. Too niche, too strange, too risky. But Conan delivered. On a budget of about $20 million, the film grossed nearly $100 million worldwide. Critics were divided. Some praised its raw energy, others dismissed it as overly violent. But audiences loved it. The film not only cemented Arnold Schwarzenegger as a rising star, but also proved that fantasy epics could succeed at the box office. Its success spawned a sequel, Conan the Destroyer, 1984, and countless imitators in the sword and sorcery genre. From that point forward, Arnold wasn't just a bodybuilder turned actor. He was a bona fide Hollywood leading man.
Bonus.
Decades later, Conan the Barbarian continues to inspire. It wasn't just a movie, it was a launching pad. For Arnold, it was the film that transformed him into a superstar. For the fantasy genre, it proved that audiences would buy into worlds filled with blood, steel, and sorcery. Even modern franchises, from Game of Thrones to The Witcher, owe a debt to Conan's brutal, immersive world. Directors, writers, and fans still reference John Milius's gritty vision and Basil Poldoris's thunderous score. And here's the kicker. Arnold has hinted multiple times at wanting to return as Conan in a story about the warrior's later years, an older king reflecting on a life of battles. Fans call it King Conan. Will it ever happen? That remains to be seen. But one thing's for sure, Conan isn't just a relic of the past. He's a legend who refuses to die, just like the barbarian himself. So there you have it, 20 incredible facts plus a bonus about the making of Conan the Barbarian, 1982. From dangerous stunts and hidden history to unforgettable performances and behind-the-scenes chaos, this movie wasn't just made, it was forged, like steel, in fire and blood. What's your favorite behind-the-scenes story from Conan? And would you want to see Arnold return for King Conan? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell for more untold stories from the world of cinema. Because as Conan himself might say, the best in life is crushing boredom with epic tales of movie history. So go ahead, hit that like button, smash subscribe, and join the tribe for more legendary movie stories.